Okay. Okay, we're ready to start.
Chair Ash, you're on mute.
Sorry. We now call this meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee to order. Please give your attention to this short video.
Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted as a Zoom meeting pursuant to the provisions of Assembly Bill 361, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is being live streamed on the CCTA website. The chair will call upon members, staff, and other speakers by name. Please speak clearly and state your name before giving comments or remarks. Persons participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. Members participating by Zoom wishing to speak should physically raise their hand and unmute their mic when called upon. Members should mute their mics when done speaking. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the Raise Hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. After 3 minutes, staff will lower their hand and mute their mic. Participants via phone will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice for public comment guidelines are printed on the meeting agenda. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Great. Jackie, please conduct the roll. Can you getting ready for the roll?
Okay, there was another recording going. Member Bankert? Member Bristow?
Here.
Member,
Okay.
Member Carr?
Here.
Member Chahal? Why is it doing that? Member Esquivel?
Member Rosa Esquivel present.
Member Hammond?
Present.
Member Hurley? Member Miller?
Present.
Member Moriarty?
I'm here.
Member Asuna?
Present. Present.
Member Rosenberg? Member Vega? Member Wayne,
Present.
Member Linder, Vice Chair Linder, Chair Ash,
Present. Do we officially have quorum?
we have quorum.
Great. We want to welcome new member Marie Asuna from the city of Oakley.
Yes.
Marie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Maria Osuna, and I represent the city of Oakley. I've been with the city of Oakley, living in the city of Oakley for over 31 years, and it's a privilege to represent them.
Great. And is Oakley even 31 years old, or was it unincorporated back in the day?
It was unincorporated at the time.
Great. Well, welcome and thanks for joining us. All right. So
Thank-
our next item on the agenda is public comment. Jackie, have we received any written public comments? Any written comments? Okay. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to speak during public comment on an item not part of the agenda? If so, please raise your virtual hand, which you could do on the reactions down below. And staff or I will call on you.
We have not received any written comments.
Great. And is there any member from the public here? Okay.
Looks like no public comments.
Thank you. That concludes the public comment item. The next item on the agenda is the consent calendar, which includes the summary of actions from December 14th, 2022, and acknowledgement of the member attendance log. Are there any changes or comments from the committee? Do we have we received any written public comment? Do we have anyone from the public who would like to speak on the consent calendar items? Please raise your virtual hand and staff or I will call on you. Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion?
We have not received any written public comment.
Okay, great. Does anybody
I
wanna
make a motion to approve the minutes of December.
Chair,
Okay, I had.
Chair Ashman,
I think I heard Rosa said first and Ed said second. Okay. Please conduct a roll call vote.
Member Eckert, Member Bristol,
Yes.
Member Carr,
Yes.
Member Jahal, Member Esquivel.
Yes.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Member Hammond,
Aye.
Member Hurley, Member Miller? Member
Present. Oh,
Moriarty?
I mean, aye, sorry. That's what I meant to say. Aye.
Member Moriarty?
Yeah, approve.
Member Osuna?
Yes.
Member Rosenberg? Member Vega? Member Wayne?
Aye.
Chair Linder? Vice Chair Linder? That was Vice Chair Linder? No, okay.
He's not here today.
Chair Ash?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously by majority with first with Member Esquivel and second by Member, I can't remember who the second was.
Miller.
Member Miller.
Member Miller, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will now move to the regular agenda items. We have one action item tonight introduced by John. Are you introducing this?
Yes, I will. Chair Ash, good evening, Chair Ash and committee members. John Hong, Director of Planning. I'm sitting in for Matt Kelly, who, if you didn't hear already, is sick tonight and very sick, unfortunately. Anyways, so for this item, again, just a little bit of background. The growth management program requires that every 2 years, the authority review and allocate funds to the jurisdiction, cities, towns, and unincorporated county, subject to the submission of a statement of compliance by the jurisdiction and findings made by the authorities. So this compliance is essentially in the form of a checklist. And this checklist that you have in the packet provides a vehicle to measure local jurisdictions' fulfillment of the requirements of the Measure J GMP. Also, the compliance checklist for this reporting period covers calendar years 2020 and 2021. Based on your review and approval today, the checklist will be brought to the authority board at the next meeting for their approval. With that, I do see there's two members of two staff from the city of Danville, David Crompton, Planning Director, and Andrew Dillard, Transportation Manager. And I want to hand it out to you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Great, thank you, John. Good evening, Chair Ash and committee members. My name again is Andrew Dillard. I'm the Transportation Manager with the town of Danville, and joined by David Crompton, who's the Chief of Planning with the town of Danville. Thank you for the opportunity this evening to present the town of Danville's 2020 and 2021 Measure J Growth Management Compliance Checklist. And we do have a PowerPoint presentation to just kind of go over the highlights of our checklist for this reporting period. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So again, this is our 2020 and 2021 Measure J checklist, which you should all have a copy of. It's some 200 pages long. That's David and I's contact information. So to begin, I'm going to go over some of the sub-regional transportation planning activities and highlights during this reporting period. To begin, the town continues its active participation on regional transportation planning committees and programs, including the Contra Costa Transportation Authority Board, its Technical Coordinating Committee, the Innovate 680 Policy Advisory Committee, as well as the Technical Advisory Committee, the Southwest Area Transportation Committee, which is the RTPC that covers South County and the La Miranda area, the Tri-Valley Transportation Council, the Dory Valley Oversight Committee, and then local programs such as our Measure J Traffic Student Transportation Congestion Relief Program and our San Ramon Valley Street Smarts Program. Danville did continue its participation in transportation and improvement and traffic mitigation fee programs such as the TVTC fee program and another program called the Southern Contra Costa Transportation Mitigation Fee Program, which purposes are to mitigate traffic impacts of new development and to support the goals and the objectives of the Tri-Valley Transportation Action Plan, transportation plan for routes of regional significance. So of note, during this reporting period, the Tri-Valley Transportation Council and the Technical Advisory Committee began work on an update of the Tri-Valley Transportation Action Plan and Transportation Plan, which is, as you probably have heard, they're wrapping up at all the RTPCs, but that work began all the way back in, I think it was 2020 when it first started. So it's been a long process. But again, we're nearing the finish line with that. Also during that time, the TVTC was very busy in that we updated, or actually we adopted a fee nexus study in 2021. And then we began work on what's called a strategic expenditure plan for the fee program. Ultimately, this fee update was approved in 2022. But I'm mentioning that because the new list of projects for that fee program does include $5.7 million in funding programmed for CCTA's Innovate 680 project, as well as numerous crossing improvements throughout the Iron Horse Trail corridor, both in southern Contra Costa and Alameda counties. Moving on to some of the highlights of Measure J program funds locally here with the town of Danville. Lots of projects and activity that went on even though it was during COVID. We continued with a lot of design work, going after grants, getting grant procurement in order to fund some of these projects that are either exclusively or in part funded with Measure J funds. And I'm going to go over a few of the projects here that, again, either started or were completed during this time that did include Measure J funds. First and foremost, as I'm in the transportation industry and traffic engineering, we replaced all 54 of our traffic signal controllers in our central management system, again, in part using Measure J funds during the reporting period. That was a two-phase project. We began preliminary planning work for a fiber optic project, of which the first step was adoption of a fiber optic master plan, which was completed late in 2021. We also continued to upgrade our traffic signal network with battery backup systems, which is very vital, particularly with all the power outages that we've experienced over the last few years. We completed upgrades to Iron Horse Trail crossings with what are called rectangular rapid flashing beacon systems and lighting systems at 3 locations, also in part using Measure J funds. We completed a couple of paving projects, including a Cape Seal and a Slurry Seal project with Measure J and local streets and roads maintenance funds. All to try and maintain our 70 plus PCI, and we're currently, I believe, sitting around 80. And PCI, again, for those who don't know that acronym, is Pavement Condition Index. It's a rating of 0 to 100 of your scale of how the condition of your pavement for your city. A highlight, I'd put this probably at the top of the list with the signal controllers, was the completion of our townwide bicycle master plan, which also was funded in part with Measure J funds. And from that, we formed our first bicycle advisory commission, which has we've already had 3 meetings to date. So that was a major accomplishment during the period. And then lastly, I want to mention the Diablo Road Trail, which is a very high profile project here in Danville, and I'll go over that here a little bit. We began the environmental phase for that project. There is quite a bit of Measure J program funds on that project, and that's something that's going to be ramping up here in 2022, but work began on the preliminary design and environmental during the reporting period. Just a little bit about the traffic signal projects that we have in the queue that we either started some preliminary engineering work or design work on and or procurement of grant funds. One is what we call our traffic signal modernization project, which is going to include several things, including putting in vehicle video detection and bicycle detection along the corridor, upgrading our signal cabinets, and things of that nature. Another project is, this is a newer project that I'm mentioning it because CCTA recently procured OBAG 3 funds for this countywide smart signals project, and of which Danville is going to be a partner of. Talks of that began during this reporting period as far as structuring our project application. This is the area highlighted here that will involve that project within Danville that will include things such as video detection and hopefully fiber optic upgrade as well. Lastly, I'll mention with signals is our fiber optic interconnect communications. We did complete a fiber optic master plan during this reporting period, and we're about ready to begin the design construction phase of that project. Again, in part, there will be some Measure J funds on that as well. All of these projects, is important to note that there's components that benefit active transportation, all of which support our complete streets policy that's contained in our general plan, and that we must have on the books in order to be able to qualify to receive not only Measure J funds, but all the other state and federal funds that are out there. This is a few examples of the type of components that we're installing with these projects that I mentioned that benefit cyclists and pedestrians. Of note, you can see that we have green pavement markings and bike boxes, and video detection that helps detect bicyclists and give them real-time feedback with the form of some of the LED signage you see there at our signalized intersections. Lastly, the project, I did mention it last on that list, but I want to mention it again because it's a very high profile project, and there are several different pots of Measure J funding for the work that's been done already, as well as the upcoming final design and construction, and that's the Diablo Road Trail project. It's a 0.9 mile long project that will go along the Diablo Road corridor, and it basically will connect with the existing trail segment that's to the west with a new trail segment to the east that's currently under construction by a developer as part of the McGee Preserve project, a 66 home subdivision. I'm highlighting this project because in 2021, again, environmental assessments and planning began with that project. And we recently adopted the mitigated negative deck for that project, so it is well on its way. Fast forwarding to a couple of the events that are happening. I mentioned the mitigated negative deck that was approved in 2022. In 2023, in January, of course, we had all those storms and we sustained some damage along that corridor. So we're actually currently working on repairing those damage that was received during those storms. And ultimately, again, as I mentioned, we'll be going to final design and then construction later in 2023, all of which, again, this project is utilizing Measure J funds. So, and this is an example of the one of the completed sections on the east end of the trail network that's being constructed by the developer. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Crompton, who's going to talk a little bit about housing progress and opportunities, including the annual reports that were submitted in 2020 and 2021.
Thank you, Andy, and good evening, Chair and committee members. It's a pleasure to be here to talk to you tonight. I'm just going to go through a couple of the major residential developments that are currently under construction or in process in Danville right now. Then give you a little bit of update on our housing element progress and kind of outlook based on what we've adopted so far. So I'm going to start out with this. This is a mixed use project, and it's right downtown on Harts Avenue. And it's if you know Danville, this was the site of the old Foz restaurant, and they did demo, removed all the trees in the old restaurant building in the fall. So this is a 37-unit condominium project with about 4,000 square feet of retail along the street frontage. We always want to keep kind of a pedestrian, feel and atmosphere along the street. Go ahead, next slide, Andy. And you can see there's the retail on the ground floor, retail restaurant, and then the condos above and out towards the back, towards the town's parking lot. This was subject to the town's inclusionary housing ordinance, so 15% of the units, so 6 units are deed restricted or will be deed restricted to be moderate income units. And so they've done a lot of the site prep, and they're kind of waiting for the rains to end, and we'll start excavation. There's actually an underground garage. All the parking is provided underground as part of this project. And go on to the next one. This is 375 West El Pintado. It's right off the freeway off El Cerro, and it's about a 2-acre site. And it's a site that was approved for a senior condominium project. It's 57 units. And as we've seen on a lot of our recent projects, they did invoke state density bonus law. And they were able to do that based on the senior population that would be housed within the project. The project was approved last summer, and they are just starting to go out and kind of clear the site and demo it. It's a vacant site, so I've done a lot of work with the agencies. There's kind of a ditch or a stream that goes through it, so that's been kind of holding it up, but they're about ready to go here. And Andy, if you go to the next slide, you get a picture of kind of what it looks like. This is a 3-story project that, again, it would be for seniors only. And on the next one, Andy. And this is probably the biggest project going on in Danville. This is one of our housing sites from our last housing element round. This is 7 acres. It's down off of Camino Ramon near Fostoria, right, kind of down by Costco. It used to be a walnut orchard, and it was owned by East Bay Regional Parks, and now TrueMark Homes is proposing to develop 168 townhomes on the site. Next slide, please. And you can see it's mostly a 3-story project. Again, 168 units. Because they are buying it from East Bay Regional Parks, there's something called Surplus Lands Act. And so some of the provisions of that being sold by a public agency, they have to provide 15% of the units as very low income units. So we'll get about 26 units out of this project that will be deed restricted to be very low, I think for 55 years. So that will help us a bit on our housing numbers. Then I'm going to move on just to talk a little bit about our housing element. As you are all aware, all your cities have probably been scrambling here in the last few months to complete your housing elements. The town completed our housing element and had it adopted by our town council in January. Our housing assignment from the state and ABAG was 2,241 units, and which was a huge lift because we don't have a heck of a lot of developable vacant land, and our last RENA assignment was about 550, so it's about 4 times what we had before. So these are all the sites that have already been redesignated from various general plan and zoning designations to multifamily. And so all these sites are now multifamily with a minimum density of 30 units an acre, 30 to 35 units an acre. We are anticipating that we'll see density bonus applications on most of these sites. And so probably more in the range of 40 to 45 units an acre. This was a total of about 74 different sites all over town and about 74 acres of land in town that was redesignated for multifamily housing. And again, we submitted it to our draft housing element to the state end of January. And so we're kind of in the middle of the state 60-day review period to get back to us on whether they will certify our housing element. So this is, with all these new sites in town, we probably will be looking at some, some more larger and higher density projects throughout the, certainly over the next few years and over the next 8-year housing cycle period. So that's kind of where we are housing wise and significant development wise, and be happy to answer any questions about any of that.
And I'll just wrap up that is the end of our presentation. Those are just a few of the highlights of our planning efforts and projects and housing during the reporting period. So we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, guys. Are there any comments or questions from the committee members? Patty, are you waving to me? Did you have a question? Okay, Judd, and then Ed and Rosa will go in that order. Judd?
Oh, thank you. With all that new housing being built in town, I don't want to get too far into the weeds on it, but what issues did you have to consider regarding traffic flow associated with all those new housing units?
Well, because we did and currently adopt the general plan changes and the rezonings to actually implement our housing element, we did an EIR that studied all the impacts, potential impacts, including traffic impacts. So the EIR came back with a number of mitigation measures to help reduce impacts. We were not able to completely reduce VMT impacts because we just don't have mass transit. We don't have a lot of bus lines that come through real frequently. And so unfortunately, we weren't able to mitigate all the impacts, but still we had to approve it because under state law, if we don't approve it, then we're subject to a lot of penalties and other fines and other issues. So we'll continue to, as each individual project comes in for review, we'll look at each one individually and try to mitigate any impacts to the extent that we can. So that's kind of an ongoing issue.
Are there any specific things you can point out that were some of your mitigating approaches?
For the multifamily, well, I think there was this one of the ideas was to try to move housing sites that were further out in the town, closer to the freeway, and go denser. We did a little bit of that. We weren't able to do as much as maybe the EIR would have liked as far as completely reducing the impacts, because we just don't have, most of Eastern Danville is residential and relatively newer residential. And so it's hard to find sites that property owners are going to be willing to get together and, put their sites together and create a development site. So they weren't the types of sites that the state would accept as viable for development. So, and then just the standard mitigations as far as the programmatic requirements, as far as the amount of parking, the requirements for trail connections and that type of thing were all kind of the standard mitigation measures that we have.
I noticed a pretty large parcel fairly far out Camino Tasajara.
Yeah.
Is that going to be a lot of houses, and does that require some changes to Camino Tasajara itself?
That's the Wood Ranch Estate. It's a 17-acre parcel that about 8 acres of it was changed from a mixed-use designation to a multifamily to 30 to 35 units an acre. So that is a possibility of about 240 units on the property. There would have to be a site-specific traffic study done. It's likely that there would have to be a new intersection there at Camino Tasajara. Right now, there's a median, so you can't even make a left turn out. So that's if and when that happens, there will be additional studies done.
I'll add from the transportation perspective as far as mitigations. Anything with the current project or the programmatic era with the housing element does not call for any sort of capacity increasing measures to our arterial network. It would only be for access and safety, essentially. As you're probably all very aware, in the SQL world, we need to use BMT now as our primary metric. We're moving away from LOS, which of course, the CCTA has recently updated its technical procedures, of which Danville was participated in that process. And that we've been using the new CCTA technical procedures and those VMT guidelines explicitly for new projects, as well as for the analysis for the programmatic EIR.
Thank you.
And then Rosa.
Oh, sorry,
Sorry,
I
I
just wanted
was-
to say thank you. No
Sorry.
question. No question for me.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead,
Is
Ed.
it okay for me to go then, Chair Ash? All right, I've got 3 questions, but I promise they're all very, very short and quick. One, I noticed that on the density you were talking about maybe even going up like 40 units per acre and stuff, and I just wanted to ask how many stories tall are you having to go to get that many units per acre?
Well, the reason that we kept our base densities fairly low at 30 units an acre, 35 units an acre, was that we anticipate
Bonus
density
density.
bonus requests, which when they ask for density bonus for additional affordability, they can ask for concessions, and it's usually height. So we're anticipating 3 stories at the 30 to 35 and up to 40. We have a project that was approved a few years ago called the Lexon Riverwalk, kind of down by the freeway there at the Diablo Road. That was a 40 unit per acre density bonus project that has a combination of 2 and 3 stories. So, we're thinking that starting at 30 units an acre and going with 30 or 40% density bonuses, we'll be at 40 to 45 units per acre, and we'll be able to keep it within the 3 stories, we hope, especially in the downtown area.
Okay, hey, that's great. Second question is about the signal, the smart signals. This isn't like a condition or anything, but it's a question. Is there, with all of this revamping of your infrastructure, a complete wholesale replacement of it, has there been any thinking given to municipal coordination or anything where there is some communication at the boundaries?
Yeah, that's a great question, Commissioner Miller. So actually, just today, we had a meeting of a technical advisory group for the Smart Signals project. And one of the core principles, or should I say objectives, of that project is to eventually, have a central management system within the county to better handle congestion, if there's breakdowns on the freeway, and being able to better coordinate our signals along our arterials, all of which is, you probably heard a lot of through Innovate 680. That's all tied together. So yes, to answer your question, that is the end goal of that project, and this is probably the first of several projects that will be required to achieve that goal.
I'm really heartened to hear that. There's been, there's definitely been some infrastructural improvements throughout the county over time, but they've all been very siloed. And I'm a resident of Clayton, so I feel, so to speak, the lack of coordination between the Concord and Walnut Creek, metropolises. So it's YV doesn't feel as good as it probably could on a lot of days. All right, so getting to my third question to wrap it up and make it quick. During this last 2-year period, Have there been any changes to your designations for regional routes of significance within like the SWAT area, or well, I guess SWAT's now not the term, but within your region?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, the Tri-Valley Action Plan is just a little background, is unique in the fact that it involves Alameda County's cities as well, including Livermore, Pleasanton, Dublin, Alameda County, as well as San Ramon and Danville and the county. So it is unique in that sense. As far as routes of regional significance within Contra Costa, I know in Danville, there hasn't been any changes with that designation. It's been the same for the last several iterations of the action plan. I believe the same is true for San Ramon. I think I recall, I don't want to misspeak, but I think there's been a few updates with this new action plan that we're working on in the Alameda area. But for the most part, in San Ramon and Danville, they're the same.
I really appreciate you speaking to that. Thank you.
Great. I have some questions, but anybody else first? Okay, I'll go. So I just want to echo what Ed talked about on the coordination of signals. I think him or I ask it for every city because we see that it's a big problem. It's great if your signals all work, but if the towns before or after you don't, then that we all back up into it messes up what you're doing. So thank you for coordinating that. That's important. On the housing, is any of that in the sort of that downtown core where a lot of it is any of it zoned multi-use commercial retail, or is it all just intended to be housing?
Yeah, so first and foremost, we had to find a way to meet our housing need. And so it's mostly housing, but there is a provision for all the stuff downtown. We have a downtown business district ordinance, and so we created a new District 13 that is multifamily, 35 units per acre. And it does specify that for projects that front onto the major streets and boulevards, that 8 to 10% of floor space needs to be devoted to commercial on the ground floor. Because, you know, again, we want to maintain that kind of pedestrian friendly walking mall type atmosphere throughout the downtown Danville area. So there would be a requirement for commercial on the ground floor adjacent to the street for those sites that directly abut the major streets.
Great, thank you. And then I recently heard your mayor talking about the large number of potholes that you guys had to experience in January. So he was, I think, very proud of city staff on what you had to accomplish. I'm just curious, you know, how many of that, like a lot of the Measure J funds goes to slurry seals, right? And improving the roads. How many of that was on roads you've recently done? How much of it was roads that, hey, we need more money because we didn't quite get to those roads? Help me just understand that issue.
Sure, I can speak to that. Yeah, I think every city is in the same boat, pardon the pun, with all the water that we got and the damage to our roadways. That's just what happens when you have weather of that magnitude. But to your question, undoubtedly that the roads that suffered the worst were some of our roads that are in need of an overlay. And I think what the mayor probably was speaking to was we did do townwide pothole repair, but we did an intense effort along the Sycamore Valley Camino Tasajara corridor, particularly Sycamore Valley Road, where that is in need of an overlay. We got a contractor to come out and just do nothing but fill potholes along that corridor and stretch. Kind of to your question about use of Measure J funds, I will tell you that when we pave an arterial in Danville, and we primarily do all overlays on arterials, almost all the time we rely on grant funding for that. A lot of the Measure J funds that we spend are on our local roadways. The cost for paving those arterial roadways are pretty great. So we have to rely on that grant funding to do that. So we can focus, all of our local money, whether it's gas tax and or Measure J, on our residential streets, whether they be slurry seals, cape seals, or even overlays as well. We put quite a bit more money from our local street maintenance into our pavement management. I think we're about 3 million per year now. And of course, our Measure J funds, we're pegging around, 700,000 to 900,000 every year. So kind of gives you an idea, and that goes across multiple projects. So that kind of gives you an idea of the amount of local funds that we put towards paving.
Great, thank you. Just helps me understand everything that goes on the roads. And I guess this is more of a question for the CCTA stuff, but it came up based on something Andrew had talked about. Is he talked about a score of 80 on their pavement index. I don't know if that's great, good, bad, sucks. Do we have a score from like every city so I could compare? Danville, you might not have it today, John or Colin, if you have that, or if we can get it for next meeting, that would be a great resource to have. It sounds like a good score, but I'm curious.
It actually, Chair Ash and committee members, that is actually a good score. Just think of like your grades in school. So there's like what do you call it? A report card that MTC, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, publishes every year, and it has a PCI, pavement condition index, for each cities, towns, unincorporated county, and it lists the past years for comparison, so you can compare yourself against your neighbors, neighboring cities and towns and whatnot. But I'll make a note of it to obtain the latest version of that PCI score and present to, or provide it to this group next meeting.
Yeah, that'd be great. And yeah, like I said, 80 sounds good. Just was curious to see the comparison, how you're doing compared to everybody else. Does any other member have a comment, question?
I guess I should, since I am in the town of Danville, not city of Danville. Just a couple of questions. Talking about coordination, there's the coordination like Ignacio Valley, where you move through Ignacio and you're in one town or city, then you're in another. How about a street like Fostoria, where they've recently introduced the new signal at the Costco gas station, which the gas station's in San Ramon, the Costco's in Danville, and the intersection's a bit of a mess. It backs up into the gas station now. So is that something that gets coordinated? Is that something that is in San Ramon's jurisdiction? How do we manage those that's a different sort of town interface. How do those get managed?
Thank you, Commissioner Carr. Great question. So that signal, as well as the signal to the west at Camino Ramon and Fostoria, those are both controlled by San Ramon. There is a portion of the signal where the right-of-way line cuts across. So we basically technically like 25% of those signals are within Danville right away, but they're all under the control and jurisdiction of San Ramon. We do pay a annual maintenance fee through an MOU for them to maintain not only the sidewalk there, but part of the signal and landscaping. But as far as like who has the say of coordination and timing and all that, that's all San Ramon, even though that, that Costco is in Danville, but the gas station is in San Ramon. As we know, that signal got put in as part of that gas station. And I know that the staff is working on, they are looking at it. I know I've talked to them about, timing and so forth, and they're observing what's happening, and there'll be a series of, observations and probably timing changes over the coming months and years as the patterns kind of settle in. But that's probably as much as I could speak to that, since it's not a Danville signal, but that's kind of my short answer for that one.
No, it's a great answer. And then to build on that intersection to the west, that's where the 168 homes will go in Danville. So that all starts just confab a bit through that particular area. So, Danville will have to play a significant role as we unpack all of that going forward.
Yeah, I will add that actually, now I think of it, it's important to note that we do talk and we do collaborate and seek each other's opinions when a traffic study comes in, or an EIR, for example, for the Costco, or like for R and for Burrell. We sought San Ramon's transportation division input on the traffic study for that, and vice versa for Costco. So we do a lot of great cross collaboration, as I know a lot of cities do in the county, but we, especially between Danville and San Ramon, we work pretty well together. So we make sure to include each other when we think the other jurisdiction is going to be affected.
Great. And the last thing I noticed, I think it's this week, there are 2 intersections downtown that we are having. It's the first I've seen it locally. I'd seen it in other areas some years ago, where we've got the flashing left-hand yellow innovation on the signal along Diablo Boulevard as it gets near its terminus downtown. Is that something Measure J helped enable, or no?
Yeah, so the Measure J funds, they all contribute to signal improvement projects. So yeah, in a roundabout way, it probably will fund a portion of that. But thanks for noticing that. That just completed yesterday about 5 o'clock. So it's a brand new improvement. And it is something that a lot of cities are doing. I think Walnut Creek and Pleasant Hill have done quite a few, but not to get in the weeds here, but it's a treatment that really helps improve intersection safety, and particularly for the left turn movements, where we've had a lot of broadside collisions at those intersections, and that flashing yellow arrow treatment really gets the driver's attention and doubles down on the message that they have to yield to opposing traffic. So it was actually a very complicated project from a programming perspective, because there's a lot going on at those intersections. But yeah, it's it's about 24 hours old now. So we're going to be interested to see how it works. But we probably won't see too many more of those in Danville, because we don't have intersections like that as far as unprotected left turns. But thanks for noticing that, and appreciate any feedback in the future.
Happy to do so. I'll end with one last question, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but how do we think further about Sycamore Valley, where there is a time of year around rush hour that the visibility on that street gets very, very decayed by the sun setting? And I think there's been 2 fatalities in the last 4 or 5 years along that stretch of road because of the way the sun just has the perfect angle to blind the drivers. Is there anything that can be done there, or anywhere where you have a phenomenon like that at certain times of year?
Yeah, no, that's a totally fair question. Obviously, we can do a lot of things to build our way out of problems, but the sun is not one of them. So one thing that cities have been doing, particularly Caltrans, they were first out of the gate, is putting yellow reflective tape around the signal heads and the signal visors. That intersection you spoke to previously, we did that, and it works really well to really pop out the signal head, because most of the visors on signals are dark, other than, of course, the LED lights for the bulbs. So to answer your question, we did submit for a Highway Safety Improvement Program grant to install that tape around all the signals on Camino Tas and Sycamore. because it sounds like it's not a very expensive endeavor, but actually by the time you add it all up with traffic control and materials, it can be pretty costly. So we went after a grant to in part pay for that type of improvement. So that is one example of how we would do that. And that's a great observation because it is an issue, whether it's Sycamore or Diablo Road. And it can be a challenge, certainly in the summer months.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Great. And just for reference, the California Municipal Code allows a town and city to be interchangeable in their word definition and use. So the town of San Francisco is just like the city of Danville. But I do respect that you call it the town of Danville. So I want to get that right in the future. Any other questions from the board? Committee. Okay. Do we have any members of the public with questions?
We do not have any members of the public with comments.
Okay. Michael, since you're from the town of Danville, would you like to make a motion to adopt this?
Well, I was going to ask if I'm allowed or if I have to recuse since it's my town, but if I am allowed, I will make the motion to approve this growth management plan.
I would second that motion.
Great. Jackie, can you do a roll call vote?
Member Bankert? Member Bristol?
I approve.
Member Carr?
Approve.
Member Jahal? Member Esquivel?
I approve.
Member Hammond?
Approve.
Member Hurley? Member Miller?
Aye.
Member Moriarty?
Approve.
Member Osuna?
Approved.
Member Rosenberg? Member Vega? Oh, I'm sorry. Member Vega? Member Wayne?
Approve.
Vice Chair Linder? Chair Ash?
Approve.
The motion passes unanimously with Member Bankert absent, Member Jahal absent, Member Rosenberg absent, and Vice Chair Linder absent. The first motion was by Carr, second by Miller.
Great. Thank you for that. And thank you, Andrew and David, for being here and taking a lot of tough questions. We appreciate everything you do in your community and for your town there. So thank you.
Thank you.
The next agenda item is informational and will be presented by Colin Clark to provide an update on the One Bay Area Cycle 3 Active Transportation and Safe Streets for All grant programs. That's a really long name. Colin, can you take it away?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Ash. Good evening, members. So part of the reason for the long name is because there's multiple funding programs that we're updating you on tonight. So OBAG 3 is the One Bay Area grant from MTC, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, the regional 9-county Bay Area competitive process that was completed after the competitive process countywide here in Contra Costa. And so sharing screen here, showing the projects that were awarded by MTC and the dollar amounts that have been approved by MTC. And ATP is the another funding program that had been a similar timeline in 2022 in terms of the call for projects, the submittals, the evaluations, and the announcements in recent months. So ATP is the Active Transportation Program Cycle 6 at the state level. And then in addition to that, projects that didn't receive funding at the state level from Caltrans for ATP Cycle 6 had the ability to compete at the region level, 9-county MTC. And so some projects received funding from that funding source. And in addition to that, then there was the federal earmarks that were won by congressional earmarks signed into law by the U.S. President and Congress, and the U.S. DOT, so the Department of Transportation, SS4A, so that's the Safe Streets and Roads for All program that was the Cycle 1 in 2022 and using federal fiscal year of 23-24. Cycle 2 is coming up on us. It'll be announced in terms of the call for projects and competitive application process here in April. And submittal will be presumably sometime this summer for Cycle 2. So all that said, there's a lot of good news in Contra Costa for Contra Costa because in terms of the OBAG 3 countywide approved list that was nominated by CCTA's authority board in September of 22. The majority of the projects received all of the funds that were nominated and requested by CCTA. So there's a countywide smart signals project. Our director, John, is the project manager for that project, and that addresses each of the jurisdictions throughout Contra Costa. And same thing with the countywide Safe Routes to Schools program from a non-infrastructure standpoint. So basically all, I think it's 170,000 students throughout Contra Costa will now be served by this county-wide Safe Routes to School program. So CCTA is working with 511 Contra Costa, Safe Streets Diablo, Contra Costa Health Services, the public health folks, and Safe Streets San Ramon Valley to expand the Safe Routes to School program countywide so that everyone can benefit. And then in addition to those two countywide projects that received full funding that was requested, you can see there's the projects in Pittsburgh, Concord, Richmond, Pinole, Lafayette, unincorporated Contra Costa County. San Pablo received a project from ATP6 regional funds, Walnut Creek, Safe Routes to School, infrastructure improvements. And then it is important to note in terms of the SS4A funds that most jurisdictions nationally competed, if they competed at all, they competed for competitive funds for a comprehensive safety action planning process. In CCTA's case, we had already done quite a bit of safety planning and were able to be eligible for the implementation grant, meaning construction as opposed to planning. And so CCTA was fortunate enough to win $29 million or so from the federal government directly for 5 of our different agencies. And so you see East Bay Regional Park District, and the city of Martinez coordinating on this project, $925K there. El Cerrito, 2 Antioch projects, including a bicycle garden for Safe Routes to School infrastructure, and Moraga also to receive funds for construction. There's a lot of information here, but happy to take questions, and thanks for the opportunity to update you.
Great, thank you. Okay, I see Rosa with your hand up. Do you want to go ahead and ask a question?
Yes, please. 2 questions. What's involved with Safe Route to Schools? Is that like improving the streets design, bumps, or what is Safe Routes to Schools?
Are you asking in terms of the countywide project at the top, the $3,665,000?
Yeah, or in general, like what does that mean to me? I'm sorry, I'm not too familiar with Safe Route to Schools.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I just want to make sure that I'm head in the right direction in terms of the answer, because up here at the top, the countywide CCTA project is a programmatic non-infrastructure funding win here. And so it's Safe Routes to Schools, meaning Safe Streets Diablo. It's assemblies and instruction with students and children at the different schools. But then in the case of Walnut Creek, which you see lower down the list with $2.5 million approved by MTC, those are Safe Routes to School infrastructure as opposed to non-infrastructure. So I just wanted to quickly make that distinction.
I still don't know what it is, but maybe I'll do research. I just like it's like services to children, or it's not about police officers on the
in
corner?
terms of how to safely walk and bike to and from school.
Education and outreach.
Pedestrian and bicycling and micromobility. It's outreach and engagement with the community. It's, a number of different things from a communications standpoint and a community engagement standpoint, and materials. I think one of the things that'll come out of this is a purchase of a vehicle for the Contra Costa Health Services folks that host these types of events throughout the county. So there's a number of different ways that the money can be spent to support the non-infrastructure programs. And the national organization, if you're interested in, it's called Safe Routes Partnership.
Thank you. And then just my second question, I have my eye on El Cerrito and then Richmond Bayview. Is that paving? Is that paving the streets? There's an El Cerrito project, Richmond Street, complete streets improvements.
Yeah, so yes is the short answer. The complete streets term refers to multimodal, so serving not just vehicle drivers, but also transit and pedestrians and cyclists. And so it will include a component of repaving as part of the scoping.
Thank you. That's it for me. Thank you very much.
I think I wanted to weigh in on that Safe Routes to School too. It's like a program that starts with the feds, and then there's feds and state money specifically to help Safe Routes to Schools. So you could see improvements made for bicycle routes or intersection changes or even ramps on sidewalks right near a school or on a pathway where people cross major intersections. And it's sort of like a program that money flows through. And so a community may have no other money for other projects, but they may be doing 12 projects near 2 or 3 different schools, because it's like an allocation of funding to impact that particular route where people are getting there. Colin, does that might help define which I think she's asking a little bit.
Yeah, that's helpful. Just just a clarification that I think the term safe routes to school, the phrase, has been used in the past to refer to a federal or state funding program that may not exist in that same capacity. But the program intent, I think, is still there, even if it's different funding sources. In the case of OBAG 3, One Bay Area grant, the funding sources are air quality related and surface transportation related at the federal level.
Great. Does anybody else have questions? Do I see anybody? Do we have any public comment?
We do not have any public comments.
Okay. Thank you, Colin. I really appreciate this. I don't see any other questions from the group. So good news to see money flowing into Contra Costa County. I think that concludes our regular agenda items for today. Does anyone have a summary report of the CCTA meetings in February? 30 board meetings, administrative projects, etc. John, are you taking that?
Terry Ann, I can provide just a brief update that we had the Assembly Bill 361 item. Jackie did send out an email earlier today, but just wanted to let you know that the board did decide to keep the meetings for all of the committees remote for at least another month through March. And that is dependent upon the Contra Costa Health Services recommendations for safely holding public meetings. So we do have to continue to evaluate that every 30 days. They release it somewhere around the first week of the month. So they last updated it February 1st. So I continuously monitor that every time before I provide a recommendation to our board to continue to remain remote, but just be ready at any given time to come back, because we will be making that decision at the third Wednesday of the month for the next, effective the first of the next month. So not a lot of time to let you know, but just be prepared at any given time to come back, because we are dependent upon that Contra Costa Health Services guidance. So one more month for sure of virtual meetings.
Okay. Anybody else with updates? I have one update. We've been trying to work a little bit to get additional members. We have a number of cities with vacancies. On here, we have 3 at-large appointments. I want to remind everybody of that. So if you have a friend in your city that would be a great fit for this, the CCTA board can appoint them to represent the county at large to join this committee, and there are 3 vacancies there. I do believe we will have one person that I can recommend hopefully by the end of this week. And then I have heard tonight that the town of Hercules has identified somebody, and they'll have to officially go through their town process, but we'll get another member there. So I know we are trying to fill that. If you guys know of any of those vacancies, Terry Ann, one thing, East Bay leadership said they are happy to put up a post if we have something about those at-large seats that they could post. I'm happy to get it to them or be on a chain with that to facilitate that.
Yeah, we have to do an official CCTA recruitment for the 3 countywide at-large positions because they're appointed by the CCTA board. So we don't have an identified date for that yet, but it should be in the near future. Probably next, I don't know, month or 2. We'll try to get a recruitment out, and we'll do an official recruitment, accept applications for likely a 30-day period, and then we'll review them and bring them to the Administration and Projects Committee. They'll interview them, and then they will recommend appointments to the authority board.
Okay,
We
so
do have 3, so we need a lot of applications.
yeah, I'll be happy if we get 3.
Yeah. At least 3.
So I think Rosa and Colin have a comment there as well.
I just have a question regarding the CCTA citizens members. Do we by any chance have anything to do with BART as CCTA? Do we influence or make recommendations on BART, Bay Area Rapid Transit?
I mean, we have projects with them, or I don't know if anyone here wants, I'm not the expert on this, so. Colin, did you want to take that one?
Sure. So there, for one example, there's Safe Routes to School, Safe Routes to BART grant program, and CCTA and its jurisdictions are eligible to go after that funding and competitively. But BART does have its own bicycle advisory task force. And I remember a year ago or so, there were actually no representatives from Contra Costa represented on that group. So definitely encourage that. Yeah, if there's anything more, I'll see if I can add more to that.
Colin, can you touch base with somebody at BART if there are openings for any of the committees over there, particularly for Contra Costa? Maybe share it out to this group. Maybe somebody would want to serve.
Yeah, I'll check in on that. Thank you, Chair Ash and members. And then just a quick plug for CBPAC, the countywide bike and pedestrian advisory committee. There's a vacant seat representing seniors and people with disabilities, countywide at-large seat, which will be announced concurrently with our other vacancies from different committees. I think our Director of External Affairs will be also coordinating with Terry Ann on that.
I have an idea for BART as I'm listening. Is I think there's 2 of the BART board members, maybe more, maybe less, that represent parts of Contra Costa County. Maybe we could get a presentation from them about what's happening with BART, and then what we could do is prepare to give some feedback to them as an advisory group. We could still advise them if they come before us and offer some thoughts. So maybe Terry Ann, can you talk to Matt about that idea? And if, like, we can't force them to do anything, but they could certainly be a guest speaker here, and we could certainly give them a piece of our opinions.
And what exactly do you want them to speak on, like funding for programs or?
Rosa, any thoughts or anybody?
BART safety. My big one is BART safety. Volunteer me for anything related to BART. Yeah, and I triple second your idea. If I'm interested in BART safety and maybe service levels, because I know they're under pressure to cut the service. So
Yeah, Ed, did you raise your hand on that, or?
Yeah, I did. I was just going to say that I recently attended, I think in January, as part of a Contra Costa tax committee. There was a presentation from 2 people that were presenting kind of the Vision 2050 kind of high level, where they're trying to take things both between Caltrans and BART, and it encompassed service levels and safety and trying to get a general understanding from people about what would bring them back, because obviously service, well, it's not service levels, it's that usage is still remaining abysmally low, which impacts each one of us here in the fact that every person that's not climbing back into a train car is driving a car on the road, and so it's it adversely impacts the other goals of the CCTA as well. So anyway, my point was simply going to be, I'm sorry, that I believe that BART is kind of doing some community outreach, some sort of presentations in concert with Caltrain, trying to talk about how they're trying to ascertain what their next step is, where they're trying to go and where they're trying to build out to.
Yeah, I think safety, I think safe routes to BART, and I think, them talking about people returning to BART, as well as they're at a fiscal cliff, and that's been in the papers and well established. And so I think just hearing from them as a well thought out board on this subject, I guess, would just be good to connect further on that. Because they're going to run out of money in the next 2 years. And
2025, exactly. The funding ends, the federal pandemic offset. Yeah.
Representative Foley provided an update at the board meeting at the February 15th meeting. If you're interested in going back and listening to the video, it's during the representative updates toward the end of the meeting. And he basically made an update on exactly their fiscal cliff and trying to figure out how to get people back on BART and revenues. And then he also provided an update on something else. Drawing a blank now, but yeah, if you wanted to look at it's just a very brief little quick update, but if you wanted to listen to that and just to hear what he had to say, because he is our representative on our authority board.
Yeah, if you could possibly send that out as a follow-up item and tell us what minute to fast forward to, that would be helpful. I would appreciate it. Colin, I know you were trying to show us something about those committees.
Yeah, so the BART website is showing there's 2 vacancies still, but Bill Pinkham is our one representative from Contra Costa on the bicycle advisory task force. But obviously there's other committees and the overall BART board as well to consider.
Okay, great. And maybe that could be sent out to the group as well. If you could send that link out as a follow-up, that would be helpful for staff. Do any of the committee members have comments, questions, ideas for future meetings that they would like to share?
I did want to just make a request from everyone. The Bay Ferry, a group called the Bay Ferry is doing a survey. If you just look up Bay Ferry survey, if you can please give us your feedback, I would really appreciate it. Sorry, that's my last comment.
Nope, that's that part of the agenda. So there was, and I don't see any member of the public. So I'm going to continue. The next item is correspondence and communications. We have 2 articles provided in the packet for today's meetings. Does anyone have any comments or questions regarding them? No, great. And since we've already covered future items, we talked about BART, does anybody else have any comments on future agenda items that they would like to see? Or can we all go home? Going once. Patty, go ahead, you're on mute.
Yes, I'll be quick. I see it on the agendas for future subjects. State Route 239. It looks like we haven't had an update in a while. It would be really nice if we could have an update on that.
Great. Anybody else? I know one thing on the future agenda was the 680 toll roads and what was going. How's that working? Is it working? Where's the revenue going? I know Matt had sent out an email saying that would be a future topic, so I appreciate that. All right, going once. Any other comments? Twice. All right, we are adjourned from today's meeting. This concludes the meeting at 7:28 p.m. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Thanks, staff. We appreciate all that you guys do.
Yeah.
Good night. Thank you.
Night, everyone.
Good night.